Sitting next to me, the producer. She also has another film shown in Cannes this year, which is Chat Room, at Un Certain Regard, Miss Alison Owen, sorry. Continuing behind the camera, channeling, as it were, Thomas Hardy, the lady who created and wrote the graphic novel, Miss Bosie Simmons. Sitting next to her, the scriptwriter, Moira Buffini. In front of the camera, sitting next to the producer, as Glenn, Bill Camp. Sitting next to him as Ben, Mr. Dominic Cooper. Skip one as Beth, Miss Tamsin Gregg. Next to her as Andy Cobb, Mr. Luke Evans. And of course the man in the middle, part of the Cannes family, definitely, Mr. Stephen Frears. And the first question will go here, and the lady has the second question. And the gentleman has the third.
Yes, good afternoon, Bruce Kirkland from the Toronto Sun. Again, Bruce Kirkland from the Toronto Sun, a question for Stephen Frears. Given that none of us knew that Thomas Hardy could be this funny, and thank you for channeling the inner Hardy that you had into something different, I'm curious what you told your actors to get them to have this effervescent spirit that makes this film so delicious. And then a corollary of that, I'm curious how you perceived what happened to your creation through Mr. Frears' hands.
I gave them drugs. I never said a word, honest. I never said anything, did I?
You did. Oh. Little nuggets.
Little nuggets. I say things like, can't you do it better? Listen, they're wonderful. I was very lucky.
By the way, guys, you can jump in anytime you want. You don't have to wait very sagement. And the second part of the question was to you, ma'am.
How I see the film. It's completely astonishing because it's so true to the book. I look at some of the shots and I think, blimey, there's one of Glenn and Roger Allam in a field wearing their scarves, and it's exactly how I drew it. It's very weird. What is weird is that I took from three-dimensional life and made it two-dimensional, and then Stephen has turned it back into three-dimensional. Sort of alchemy.
Well, Ms. Buffini, how did you work, if at all, with Ms. Simmons to get to the final script? Did you work together? Did you work absolutely separately?
Yes, I read Posey's book and loved it, and we met and we talked quite extensively about it. And there were a couple of things that I changed from the book, but really I loved the book so much I thought, why reinvent the wheel? It's brilliant.
What did you change?
There were 2 deaths in the book. There is only 1 in the film. And the character that Bill Camp plays, Glenn, is more interwoven into the plot in the book, in the film rather. In the book, he's more of a narrator figure, and in the film, he's very much involved in the plot.
Okay, ma'am, and then the gentleman.
Hello, my name is Tatiana. I'm from movie website Kinopoisk, Russia. First of all, thank you very much for the picture. It was very great. And the question is for Mr. Frears. One of your characters said that you have to know your ideal reader. And who's your ideal audience? Thank you.
Oh.
I think of all audiences as sort of blank canvases. They're all completely neutral. I used to go to the cinema as a child with my mother, and I still imagine that. It's very, very simple. you know, all this modern stuff they have in the cinema, all this self-referential stuff. I can't be doing all that. I just like films that make me laugh.
Sir, and then the lady here.
Hi, Baz Bammy from the Daily Mail. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And to use Bruce's word, it's a delicious movie. I've asked a couple of people why the film isn't in the main competition, and the answer I was given was that it's a comedy. You know, comedies shouldn't be in competition in Cannes. I'd argue that's bollocks. It should be. But I'm just wondering what your view is, and also the actors. You know, most of you theatre actors, I think, and you've all done classical work, and I think that comedy is probably harder to do than some classical. So can you talk about playing comedy, and can Stephen talk about why you're not in competition?
Well, it's not in competition because it simply didn't seem appropriate. And also, I didn't want to lose. Does that answer your question? At one stroke, I've avoided that humiliating end. You know, these are serious people here, and it's very, very cheeky to turn up with a film like this.
Can the actors talk about being in comedy being more dramatic?
Ms. Gregg, go first.
She knows how to do
I'm a
it.
very, very serious actress, and I don't do a lot of comedy, so...
Liar.
I like to think that I was employed on the basis that I would wear a fat suit well and bring a kind of truth to the part rather than ridiculous pratfalls. And I was wrong.
And she's in the Archers, so she was good on the farming.
He did say at one point, you asked what did he say to the actors? He did say at one point, you're only here because you know about farming, which helped a lot. You know what? I think comedy is it's almost like it's like talking about music. You either hear it or you don't, and so it's very difficult to talk about it. You know, it's about participating. And if this film is funny, it's because it's in the hands of very good artists who understand rhythm, and the editor Micklesy and Stephen working together, you know, create that arena where the right rhythms are heard at the right time. And sometimes that's, you know, that's within a millisecond, and it's about taking one frame out or changing a shot by, you know, half a second. So, you know, if it is funny, then it's, you know, it's because of them.
Mr. Cam?
Nope.
No. The characters are so well drawn up. You just have to. When we had the first read through, I think we were kind of deciding: is this going to be funny? You know, you were testing. Oh,
It's all right.
oh,
Continue.
a hand over the shoulder.
Play your cards right, and they'll sing Dancing Queen.
They're the kind of helpful comments we got while filming. Which I agree with what you said. You didn't help at all.
He just did this, look, making little comments, then laughing to himself.
Made you feel really insecure constantly.
Listen, I brought you to Cannes. You've done all right.
Oh, thank you for getting me off the radio.
Mr. Evans? Pick it up from there.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that the script was so well written, and you just let the script do the work, and it seemed to come out right. I'm probably the least funniest person in the film, but it is very, very funny.
That's what you think, mate.
Yeah, that's true.
Mr. Camp?
Mr. Camp.
Mr. Camp?
I agree with what Tamsin had to say. It's so much about rhythm and about listening to the other person, and I think that the script is brilliant that way.
Well, as you were shooting, did you all actors ever go back to the original graphic novel, which might have acted as a storyboard or something?
I think it was it was on the set every day, the graphic novel, and it was constantly referred to by everybody.
That doesn't mean that they were allowed to go back to it.
Yes, we did. There are some Posey's really clever at capturing emotional states that can't be written, and so you would go back to a particular picture of a reaction, and those were very, very revealing, very helpful. And so it was like having, a picture book story and also, a three-dimensional relationship with your director. So you have these, it's a lovely combination of the visual and the emotional and psychological. You wouldn't say that.
And quite unique, because you don't often, well, I've never done anything where I've been able to see my character in a graphic novel and see
looking so good.
Looking better than me, yeah. I made sure the hair was exactly right.
Exactly.
Ma'am, and then the gentleman. And then the gentleman.
Karen Batt for the Huffington Post.
Huffington Post?
Huffington Post. Yes, there's always a post. And it was a real pleasure to watch your film, and I have a couple questions about meaning, because at the end of the film, it's the best of all possible worlds. The adulterer is put in his place in the mud. Everyone goes to the right relationship, and then there's the question of whether it's better to lie in art or whether to be truthful. And I was wondering, are we supposed to, or not only supposed to, but how you envision the film, is there a meaning in this question of truth and versus lying and the moralism of the adulterer being punished, or are we into just the delight of being in this adolescent, fresh journey? The adolescent's view is very strong in this film, and I'd wonder if you could offer a third alternative or comment on any of these alternatives.
No, except the ambiguity is what's interesting, isn't it?
No.
Oh. What do you mean? It was to me. There was a lot of discussion. Alison, you should talk about this. She wanted the lovers at the end.
Uh-huh.
The happy couple. I said, no, we have to have the girls doing the joke about the posing with them.
No, but I was very easily convinced when I saw it. I was convinced straight
So
away.
that was the extent of the argument, whether it should have a sort of Hollywood ending, or the children or the young girls with the dead dog. But I defend ambiguity till I die.
So you won't comment on truth versus lying?
I mean, I had a go at that when I was doing it as a strip, and of course I took a rather Thomas Hardy, rather moralist Victorian line, which is probably why there were kind of vestiges of it there. But at the end, I was slightly ambiguous too.
If I were to say I was in favour of telling the truth, I'd be lying.
Mr. Wells, Mr. Friedman.
Mr.
Jeffrey Wells, Hollywood Elsewhere. I was under the impression, as I was watching it, that I was supposed to be processing or absorbing this film not sincerely. It is not meant to be sincere. It's a movie you're supposed to process in quotes. And I guess that was my way of dealing with it, because when I think of Stephen Frears, I think of my favorites being The Hit and Bloody Kids and that sort of thing, and it's just really far afield from that. So that's how I took it. And the second part would be, what do you think of the '67 John Schlesinger Far From the Madding Crowd film?
I'm not quite sure what you're saying. It sounds like the film was a big disappointment.
I'm not saying it was disappointing. I'm saying I was processing it as a ironic...
In the mic.
In quotes. Sorry.
I don't know. You're ahead of me. I just have a good laugh. I don't quite know what to say to you. I can't answer your question. It's just there.
The second part of the question is
about John Schlesinger's film.
About John Schlesinger's
I'm really
film.
jealous of it because he filmed it over 9 months. So Nick Rogue's photography is so dazzling and so wonderful, and we should really have filmed this over 4 seasons.
Yeah, as I constantly got reminded.
But you know what producers are like.
Sir?
All right, Roger Friedman from the Daily News in New York. And I have a lot of questions. First of all, where's Gemma?
She's in the United States. Why she's in the United States, I can't imagine. But she's in the United States.
We don't have Tamara Drewe. I figured somebody did something to her because she was in so much trouble in the movie.
Princess and the Pea or whatever. She's at a Hollywood premiere, and for some reason, that is.
Princess and the Pig.
What's it called?
Do you mean the Prince of Persia?
The Prince of Persia.
Oh, you mean the?
She's at the premiere of the prison. No.
She's at the what?
She's at a premiere in Los Angeles, and for some reason, they have first crack.
Well,
we are second.
Well, that's ridiculous.
They're your people, not mine.
Second part of your question.
Second question. This isn't a question. I love Tamsin. I didn't know her before, and now I love her.
She's great.
She's great.
She's
a star
I love
in
that.
England.
You
But
were
now we're
nothing, and now you're something. Is that what you mean?
Come to New York. I want Dominic to talk about his rock band and the music in the movie, and I want Bill to talk about the cows coming at him.
Go, guys.
Okay, who goes first? Music or cows?
There were no cows coming at me. I was just acting. That was that was comedy.
And that was made in the edit.
Right. It was like Psycho.
No,
Tony Perkins.
That was 3 or 4 days of cows.
It's like Psycho. Tony Perkins never knew what he saw through the hole in the wall. He never saw Janet Leigh in the shower.
No, it was great fun. We were in the mud for 4 days. Or Roger was in the mud for 4 days, and we were all standing over him.
Laughing.
But we had cows coming over the ridge, and timing and imagining 500 cows running over me, and it was a wonderful 4 days.
Not for the cows.
Right.
Mr. Cooper?
Music. We kind of had a few discussions about it, and you all seemed quite open to ideas. And I used to be in a band, so I put together a bit of a band that my brother was in, and then he wrote some music for it, and we tested it out. We went into a studio. You couldn't stand it first.
I did. It was great.
And then we put together a few more tracks, and then we went and recorded and practiced for a while. And then we had the festival to do in front of a live audience, which was great fun. And yeah, it seemed to work quite quickly. It was all put together it just seemed to work. And it seemed to work for the film, and it seemed to work for the type of band that it was meant to be. And for the type of, hideous man that he was in that particular indie type of band. So it was...
So no album? There won't be an album of this group?
It's highly doubtful.
And a tour. Tamara drew the tour.
Ma'am, the gentleman after, and then the gentleman. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, it's Anita Singh from the Daily Telegraph. It's a question for Stephen. Could you talk a little bit about how you came to cast Gemma Arterton in the role? Because I suppose it's a film that it depends on the audience falling in love with her and finding her as gorgeous as everybody else does.
You found this difficult?
No. And also how you came to cast the two schoolgirls, because I read in the notes that one of them had never acted before.
Gemma came to see me, and she sat down beside me, and I said to my casting director, is she any good? Because if she is, book her. What else was there to say? I mean, she was clearly gorgeous, she was clearly very witty, and she was nice, warm, likeable. I mean, you're lucky when things like that happen. It was easy.
And the two girls?
It was more, we saw lots of girls and eventually started putting two together. And then, you're lucky. I mean, I remember shooting a scene with them quite late in the film, by which time they were acting on a sort of note that you couldn't believe they'd got to. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure when I was auditioning them that I knew they were going to have to do this. So they were just dazzling. But in the end, it's good fortune, really. You tried to be sensible, you tried to choose people, but then these two girls just took off. That was the first week of filming. We just stood around with our mouths open. We were so impressed.
Sir, and then the gentleman here.
Ben Ben Hoyle from the Times newspaper. I've got a sort of sombre question and then a normal one. The sombre one is that we learned in the press conference earlier today that Jafar Panahi, the Iranian director who's in prison there, has just started a hunger strike and has had Juliette Binoche in tears. I wondered if you also knew him and had any, or if you had any views on that situation. And then after that, I wanted you to say a bit about whether it's getting easier to make this kind of film, Tamara, Drewe, in Britain, and sort of how you see British filmmaking panning out over the next few years.
Well, I didn't know the Iranian director, but it's terrible that he's in prison and having to go on a hunger fast. I mean, it's dreadful. You should really talk about, is it easier to make films like this?
No, I don't think the climate's particularly easy to make this kind of film. I think that's why it was such a joy to be able to get into the position to be able to make it. I think it's quite an unusual film to be able to make in England in the independent sector. In a sense, it's got more of a French sensibility than an English sensibility, I think. The indie sector in Britain tends to be much more either sort of issue-driven political films or more high-concept-y, Full Monty, Calendar Girl type things. And so to be able to make something that's intelligent and funny, but also comments on sections of society in a sort of playful, intelligent, witty way that Stephen does has been a joy.
Sir?
It's tough out there.
Hello, I'm Ferenc Varga from Hungary. I have a question for Mr. Frears. The film is full of these brilliant characters, and it's screaming out for a sequel. So would you would you consider doing a sequel to this
She's got to
film?
write it first, isn't she?
Miss Simmons?
Tamara 2.
So all the comic strips were used for this film. So
there aren't any left. There's none in the attic.
Okay. So thank you.
Okay. The lady here, the lady there, and the lady here. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm Mary Salah for Disney Channel, and I want to ask a question for Dominic Cooper, please. So first, have you ever dreamed of being a rock star during your childhood? And then can you talk about your character Ben, and if you feel close to him, etc.? Thank you.
Yes, always dreamed of being a rock star, absolutely, but unfortunately had no musical talent whatsoever, but continue to try. And the character, it was such a fantastically juicy, colourful character, as they all are, and it was great fun to play, and Stephen was always allowed us to be as, we could be as creative as we liked, really, and it was fun just playing around with someone who, you know, on the page can be seen as quite foolish, and he's just very, I wanted to make him, I didn't want you to hate him, so I thought it would be nice if you kind of found him quite sweet and endearing, because he's just a little bit stupid, really, and doesn't really know who he is or what he's doing, and he thinks the world revolves around him, and he's completely self-aware, and can't believe it when people don't know that the band Swipe has split up, thinks that's an absolute shock. It was just nice little moments, and it was nice just to be able to play around with this and sort of take it as far as I wanted it, and you'd always say, pull it back if it got too ludicrous or ridiculous. But there were moments, you know, where he plays a guitar and sings a dreadful love song to the girl he's in love with, to Tamara, and that we fooled around with and just came up with something that never felt like it was restricted or anything was imposed upon it. But he's kind of he's just a bit dense. And do I feel like him? Absolutely.
Ma'am, and then the lady here.
My name is Daniela Kramer, La Jornada, Mexico. It's a question for Mr. Frears. Congratulations, the film is wonderful. We always see English films about aristocracy and working class, but it's quite unusual to see this kind of films about burgesy. Why? And I don't know, why?
I keep meaning to ask, my wife knows the answer to this question, but I can't remember it now.
But I think you can have a lot of material from burgesy.
Sorry?
I think you can have a lot of material to do a lot of films about burgesy.
The point is that...
the English don't make films about the middle class.
Right, which we call the bourgeoisie on this side of the channel.
I'm a member of the bourgeoisie, so I know a lot about it.
Okay.
I don't know why we don't make films about the bourgeoisie, unless they're so ridiculous that it's not worth starting. But that's the one my wife knows the answer to, and I can't remember. What was the other question? Oh, I don't know why we only make films about the upper classes and the lower classes. Yes. Yes.
The lady here.
Okay, well, as we say, ça tombe bien, because I wanted to ask you, Mr. Frears, with this bouillabaisse that is mixed up of little fishes from the right wing and the left wing, which is our government right now, are there any scripts coming or comic strips coming or scenarios that you're going to write about this new situation in England, our government?
Well, it only happened last week.
Well, you should be working
you don't
on
have a
it.
script ready yet.
Yes, I can see we're failing in not...
Or comic strips, cartoons.
Give it a chance.
No, I'm not being derogatory. I think it's very interesting. How do you feel?
About the coalition?
Yes.
I'm actually quite astonished. I think possibly it's the best result that could have come out of the election. But I hope I'm right. I mean, it's, you know, good luck. You know, I think it's very tough, but I actually do think I think it's a sort of miraculous result. And somehow undeserved by everybody except by us.
And then in that sense, would you make a film about it?
Well, give us a chance. Listen, you can't. I mean,
no,
it takes years to...
Okay,
you know,
well, to pick up from her question, do you already see the seeds of comedy in that?
No.
So I guess you'll have to wait a bit longer.
Yes. Hang on, maybe next week. I don't know. Give them a chance. Where's Michael Sheen? Crouching in Hollywood. Probably appearing in Twilight 4. What? The young vicar? Oh, is that right?
Is he?
Wow. Oh, he asked me to direct him in Hamlet. I said, take care, I might say yes, and then you'd be in trouble.
Any other question? I guess I will thank you all for being here today. You're free to go and enjoy yourself on the beach.